What makes a student independent on the FAFSA? Hi everyone, I'm Tina Steele, the FAFSA Guru, and if you like what I have to say, be sure to subscribe to my channel by clicking the link below. When you fill out a FAFSA, you're going to be considered independent, which means you can fill out the FAFSA on your own with your income and your asset information, or you're going to be considered dependent, which means you have to provide your parent income and asset information on the FAFSA. There's a series of questions the FAFSA is going to ask in order to determine whether or not you are independent or dependent. If you can answer yes to at least one of these questions, then you're considered independent and you do not need to provide your parent information on the FAFSA. The first question is related to your age. If you're under 24 years old, you're going to be required to fill out the FAFSA with your parent information. So starting with the 24-25 year, the question is going to read, were you born before January 1st, 2001? If you can answer yes to that question, then you will be considered independent and don't need your parents' information. Now, I just want to elaborate on this question as to whether or not you're married. If you're under 24 years old and you're married, but separated, starting with the 24-25 year, that's going to mean that you are going to be considered dependent. Currently, the way federal regulations read on the FAFSA, if you're under 24 years old and you're married but separated, then you're still considered independent. But going forward and starting with the 24-25 year, that's no longer going to be the case. If you're under 24 and you're married but separated, then you're going to be considered dependent and need your parents' income and asset information on the FAFSA form. Bummer, I know. The next question, at the beginning of the 24-25 year, will you be working on a graduate or professional degree? So what this means is once you've earned a bachelor's degree, you are no longer considered dependent and you can fill out the FAFSA with just your information. The next question, are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? If you answer yes to that, you can be considered independent. The next question, are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? Again, if you answer yes, then you can be independent. The next couple of questions is related to you having any dependents. So the first question will ask, do you have children that receive more than half of your support? So if you're a younger student and you have children that you're supporting or a child you're supporting, then you can be considered independent. Or if you have other dependents besides children that you're providing more than half support for, then you can answer yes to that question and also be considered independent. Another question is, at any time since you turned age 13, were both of your parents deceased or were you a dependent or ward of the court? Again, if you answer yes to this question, you can be considered independent. On that same note, the next question is related to emancipation. If you've been emancipated or somebody other than your parent or step-parent has legal guardianship of you, then you can be considered independent. Now, it's important to note here, this does not mean custody. The court paperwork must clearly state that somebody had legal guardianship of you and not custody. And then the next question is related to being homeless, and it's going to ask if you were homeless or at risk of being homeless within the last year. Typically, this would need to be documented with a homeless liaison or the director of an emergency shelter or housing program. Those are the questions that are going to determine whether or not you're an independent or dependent student. I often get asked by parents and students that are considered dependent whether or not they can be considered independent because they are self-supporting and living out on their own financially. And unfortunately, no, you cannot. On certain occasions, financial aid offices can do something called professional judgment, where they can override your dependency status and make you an independent student in certain situations where you might be living on your own and self-supporting. but typically there would need to be an estrangement from parents and a documented case of abuse or something pretty significant in order for a financial aid office to make that determination. It's not something that's common at all. So until you're 24 years old, unless you can answer yes to one of those questions, you're going to be required to put your parent income and asset information on the FAFSA form. I hope you found that helpful. Thanks so much for watching.